Good morning. My name is Susan Key. I'm a Korean American writer and Korean War historian. And today I have the great pleasure of being with Soo Kim. Now, I'm not physically with her, but I get an opportunity to have a conversation with her and for her to share with our audience about her new and exciting exhibit at the USS Hornet in Alameda, California. And it is the topic of her exhibit is Korean War veteran stories and their experiences. So I would like to thank Jisoo. Thank you, Jisoo, for joining us today to share about your exhibit. I am so excited that you contacted me a couple months ago about this. And so I have a little bit of background, but I'd like to ask you to, for the benefit of our audience, introduce yourself and tell us about yourself.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you very much. 안녕하세요. My name is Soo Kim, and I'm originally from Seoul, South Korea. Before I continue talking, I first wanted to thank you, Susan, for your dedication over the years and sharing the stories and legacies of American veterans. I love reading your posts on social media. And I also wanted to thank you for helping me review all the panels that are put up on my exhibit. You've interviewed over 100 veterans over the years in person, and so I find that you are very well positioned to speak on their behalf and give voice to their experiences.
Well, it's
And
my pleasure to have had some input, and so appreciate you inviting my input.
right, well, that was really helpful. I was able to adjust it accordingly. And yes, I'm very grateful to be here and to talk about my exhibit. Yeah, so I just graduated from my museum studies program, master's program in San Francisco State University. And I've been living in San Francisco since 2021. Yeah, and I think that's kind of a short
Introduction.
introduction.
Uh-huh.
Yes, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about your family? Do you have any stories or experiences of the Korean War that has been passed down to you from your family?
Well, my family has actually been pretty blessed in the sense that we don't have any direct experience with the Korean War because my parents are from the southern west province of Korea, from the Cholla province, and they were born shortly after the Korean War. So they never went through the war itself, and also their family members. They did not have any family members in the north either. So in that sense, we're quite blessed that we never had a direct experience with the Korean War. But growing up in South Korea and being educated under the Korean system, I was well aware of what happened to Korea's history. But for some reason it never was very relatable to me because again, I didn't have any family members, and also, what you learn in textbooks are never as relatable as, talking to someone or experiencing it for yourself.
That's absolutely true. And my family had more of a closer connection to the war because my dad fought the war,
Mm,
and my grandparents escaped North Korea
mm,
right before the war happened. So their stories were passed on, and so I guess in that sense, our family was more directly impacted by the war. But
right,
same as you, growing up, I didn't really think about Korean War. I didn't think about Korean War veterans. We came to the States in 75. And yet, I was busy with my life here, a very self-centered, selfish life of trying to live the American dream and not thinking about anyone else.
right.
So it is really, I think, a blessing for us Koreans to come to a knowledge of Korean War
Mhm.
veterans, isn't it?
That is true.
Yes. So can you tell me, Jisoo, how you picked or how you came to the idea of doing Korean War veteran stories for your exhibit?
Right. So I like anything old or vintage, and so I sometimes come across vintage secondhand markets or shops. And I would occasionally come across wooden dolls or cloth dolls that were clearly Korean, but kind of mislabeled as Chinese or Japanese. And here are some examples. Like one time I came across a few of these wooden carved dolls, and well, I don't know if you can see it right now. Here we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and I had never seen these growing up in Korea, and so I was quite intrigued. And here's another example of another doll. I'm sorry that the screen doesn't show completely, but here's another
Yes. Now
doll.
that's a Korean hanbok. It's a bride, isn't it?
It
Uh,
is a bride, and it's all
yes.
hand painted. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, in her wedding dress. This is a Korean traditional wedding dress.
Yes, and a hand painted face,
Uh-huh.
and all the fabric is silk.
Uh-huh.
So these kind of things intrigue me because I love vintage items. I also like handmade crafts because it's another passion of mine. And so upon research, I found out that these would have been souvenirs or memorabilia that the U.S. service members who served in Korea during or shortly after Korea brought back to America. And these were kind of floating around the secondhand markets here in America. And as a Korean, I can identify them immediately based on the attire and the fabric type. So it got me curious about the service members. And then I realized there would still be service members alive today who experienced the war. And then I realized that they would be in their mid 90s now because it's been 75 years since the Korean War first started. And that made me a little anxious to get in touch with these people and hear their stories because of the age.
Hmm. So how did you well, I know you had more in a case of these. Are you able to show the whole case of what you
I hope
found?
so. I hope the camera allows me. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I can see it
look
all.
like this.
Wow, that's
Right. So
amazing.
I came across these on Facebook Marketplace, and the lady, she was just sitting in her attic or basement for many years in this box, so in perfect original condition. And she did not know that they were Korean. So when I saw them, I thought I have to take them in, even though I don't really collect these types of items.
Right.
But yeah, I must say I started collecting some interesting stuff while I was conducting research. For example, I started finding some interesting dolls that you see behind me in the
Mm-hmm.
exhibit space.
Hmm.
I've also came across interesting magazines that were produced during and shortly after the Korean War. And those kind of things fascinate me because growing up in Korea, we never came across them. And upon talking to a lot of Korean historians or collectors, they themselves have never come across these objects because they were all mainly taken out of Korea and very few remain in Korea today.
Hmm. And, I
Now,
imagine that a lot of those artifacts were made so that the Koreans could survive the war, have some level of income. I know a veteran here in Arizona, Mr. Gabbert, showed me during an interview wooden figures, not as elaborate and colorful as the ones you have, Chizu, but just more basic
mm,
and, painted by hand. And he said he bought it at a market in Busan. And he
mm,
was based in Busan as a quartermaster. So he
right,
was doing supply clerk type of work during the war.
right.
And on his free time, he would go out and look at what's at the market, and that would help kind of help the Korean people survive and get a little income.
That
And
is true.
so this was an income source for people who were trying to survive the war.
That
And
is very
so as US service members continued to stay in Korea even after the war, I imagine they were looking for something to take back. And so the Koreans were resourceful enough to come up with these souvenirs, right?
Very
Yeah.
true. So I'm sure you heard the same, but these type of wooden dolls with
Hmm.
folk figurines were popular. Cloth dolls were
Uh-huh.
popular, and lacquerware.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I have never really, among the veterans I've interviewed, they did not keep these souvenirs. Actually, I found these just randomly in
Hmm.
secondhand markets.
Hmm.
But it's been 75 years, so it's rare that somebody has kept a souvenir in their house for for that long.
Yes. Yes. I
And
imagine they didn't know whether it was valuable or not and whether to throw it away
or
or
they may have
not.
gifted it to a family member, and the
Right.
family member didn't
Right.
need it anymore, so just try to get rid of it. But yeah, I quickly realized that initially I wanted to do an exhibit based on the souvenirs that veterans may have potentially brought back, but I realized very quickly that that would have been very difficult because most of the veterans I interviewed did not keep any of these souvenirs anymore. At most, they had their own memories and stories,
Hmm.
or photographs that they brought along with them, but not souvenirs. So I had to quickly change the focus on the oral history.
Right. Now, and also, as you probably found out, the combat veterans didn't really have time to interact with locals or to even visit markets. I know some veterans who never met a Korean during the whole time because they're busy fighting on the front line.
Right.
They
That
never
was
met a Korean. So it really depends on the experience and the duties of each veteran as to
very
how
true.
much interaction they had. So with that, can you tell us how you went about finding these Korean War veterans to interview as subjects for your exhibit?
Right. I think it started off a little slow.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know whom to contact. I did reach out to some organizations and associations, but they didn't come back to me. But the first lucky stroke I had was by reaching out to the California Veterans Home. So I was able to get in touch with a staff there who happened to be Korean American, actually,
Oh,
and
good,
was
good.
interested in this project, and she helped me connect to several residents who
Uh-huh.
experienced the Korean War or who were in Korea during or shortly after the Korean War. So through her, I was able to meet the veterans, and also the Veterans Home in Yountville, California. The
Mm-hmm.
California Veterans Home are located in several different locations in California. I've also contacted veterans associations and also word of mouth, Facebook
Mm-hmm.
groups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, it's always best to talk in person. So I
Yes.
always had a preference for people I could actually meet in person and hear their stories because,
Mm-hmm.
some of the veterans are not comfortable with technology.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always best to go in person.
So when you started seeking out veterans and finding them, did you already have in mind that, oh, I'm going to do an exhibit on them? Or did it just kind of come about as you started to meet with them and learn their stories like, oh, wow, this would really be a great exhibit? How did that, when did that idea come to you as you were seeking out the veterans?
Right. So to be honest, until like a month or two before the actual exhibition opened,
Mm-hmm.
I actually struggled to figure out what I wanted to focus on because,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, every veteran story is different, right?
Yes.
Some served in the beginning of the war, some served during or after, um, and some of them fought in the front line, some as supporting roles. So it was really hard to figure out what I wanted to focus on, and so I did. I thought that I do more in their experience in a chronological order, based on the history of the Korean War, and then put their oral history and fit it into the chronological order of what happened during the Korean War.
Hmm. And also for the audience, in case you're all wondering if Chisu is sitting in the middle of her exhibit, she's not. This is a beautiful background she created from a picture of her exhibit there. So what we will do now is we will share each panel of her exhibit for those of you who can't physically go to visit. We will go in detail and we will have the curator. Is that correct to call you a curator or creator?
Well, maybe a student curator for now.
Okay.
I just graduated.
Curator of this exhibit explain to us. So we really have the wonderful treat of being able to get her viewpoints and explain each panel to us. I know most times when I go to museums, I have no idea what I'm looking at. So we're very lucky today. Okay,
Right.
so I'm going to share the screen.
I did want to add that while there are exhibitions on the Korean War and also there are many videos featuring
Hmm.
oral histories, you don't come across. I mean, at least for me, I have not yet come across an exhibition solely on sharing the personal memories of veterans, and
Hmm.
in particular stories of veterans from both the U.S. and South Korea. So it was just something that I wanted to focus on for my
Well,
particular.
in that way, I feel like we have a like-mindedness that to me, what is most compelling are personal stories. I mean, history is history, and
Mm,
facts are interesting, but they don't stay with you like personal stories.
mhm.
And so I think you and I have the same kind of perspective on that, that personal stories are much more interesting and they stay with you.
That's true.
I just want to start off with this introduction of Soo Kim at her Korean War exhibit is at the USS Hornet Museum. Now, can you tell us briefly where this is located and the dates of your exhibit at the USS Hornet?
Sure. So, the as you mentioned earlier, the USS Hornet Museum is located in Alameda, California, which is about a 25-minute drive from San Francisco. And it is housed aboard a historic World War II era aircraft carrier. Although this ship never fought during the Korean War, it was never stationed in Korea, but this the USS Hornet Museum is currently designated as a National Historic Landmark.
That's great. And
And,
so how many, until when will your exhibit be on the USS Hornet Museum?
right. So this I should emphasize this is my graduation exhibition from my museum studies program, and it's currently up, and it will be up until end of November, so about 6 months in total. And I should mention the opening hours that it is open from Thursdays through Mondays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., but it's closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yes, and then when I post this video, I'll put the link to the museum's website with the hours, and I think there's also a ticket information as well. So this is a beautiful picture of you at the opening.
Right.
The Stories They Keep is the title of your exhibit. So I'm not sure if I have your panels in the correct order, but if you can kind of take us through it and explain your thoughts on them.
Right. So this is just more like a poster that I wanted to keep at the entrance of the museum, at the entrance of the museum, so that it kind of introduces, shows people that there is an exhibit going on inside the ship about the Korean War.
Okay, and that's a beautiful collage of pictures. Are any of these from the actual veteran that you interviewed, or are these just
Yeah.
more stock pictures?
No, three of them are actually pictures from the veterans themselves. On the top middle, that's Mr. Bill Covey.
Mm-hmm.
Then on the right-hand side in the middle, that's Jean Red, who unfortunately passed away shortly after my interview with him. And
Mm-hmm.
then on the bottom left is Mr. Jorge Espino.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so those are people I've interviewed, and I'm still in touch with Mr. Bill Covey and Jorge Espino. I call them regularly when I can to check up on them and talk about when I can. But some of their hearing is not very good, so it's hard to
Yes.
talk to them on the phone sometimes.
Well, I think
Um,
yeah, I so appreciate that. The veterans that I've come to know, I stay in touch with also because it's more than just work for us, isn't it, Chisu? It is really, um,
at this stage, they've become like my family members. I care
yes,
about their well-being, and as if I'm talking to my own parents or grandparents, I
right.
want
For
to
you,
make
they'd
sure.
be like your grandfathers. For
Yes.
me, they're like my fathers because I'm much older than you. They're all like fathers to me and grandfathers to you. And there is that
Same
kind
for
of
me.
instant bond we have to veterans, do we not?
That is
Because they served and fought for our country, to give us our country. So, yeah,
right.
I totally understand that, Chisu. And I
Yeah.
so appreciate your loving care to these
Oh,
veterans.
thank you.
That's
Um,
wonderful to know that these are actual veterans' photos that you incorporated.
yes, I would
Okay,
say
so
for
this
my,
is,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah.
Go
For
ahead.
my exhibit, I would say the photo, 50% are photos from actual photos that the veterans shared with me.
Hmm.
And the 50 are probably the other half are from other historian friends who have also an archive of a photo collection in their archives. Also, some from the U.S. military or Navy.
Hmm.
Also, I also found photos from the South Korean side, and also in here in San Francisco, there's a place called Presidio. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it used to be an old army base, and they also have an archive. So I was able to find some photos from that archive as well.
Okay. I've been there. I didn't go to the archive. The other
It's
thing,
pretty
Jisoo,
tucked away.
at some point, if you want to check it out, there's an archive at Stanford
Really,
related to a Korean War hero. So I'll talk to you offline about that.
definitely.
And
I'd be
he's
interested
related to
in
the Hungnam evacuation.
that. Oh, okay.
So he's right there in the archives at Stanford. So yeah, let's talk about that later. So
Definitely.
here is the introductory panel. So if you can kind of take us through that and what your key points are here that you would want us to know.
Right. So initially, I was kind of walking my text was all about kind of a short summary of the war, but I had a curator who gave me very good feedback and told me, the interesting thing is how you came across this topic and what your focus is on this exhibition. What work you've done to put together, collect all these stories. So then I wanted to make a little short introduction panel of who I interviewed and the the yeah, so basically the story of how I came to interview these veterans.
Hmm. I love what you put here because this, I think, speaks to how humble our Korean War veterans are, and you know how humble they are. That's
Mm,
that's if anyone asks me what really is a outstanding trait of Korean War veterans is that they're humble, and I think that's true of all veterans of all wars. But you put
very,
something really beautiful here. Many veterans believed their stories were not worth sharing. Many shed tears as they spoke. The video interviews and personal photographs they generously offered are presented in this space. And yeah, I think that's so true that they think that, well, I didn't do anything important. They just did their duty, is what they usually tell me. And so I love that you captured their feelings, even beyond the stories they told you, like how they are. And so I love that red box with just a little bit of your own personal thoughts of what you perceived about them. I thought that was so beautiful and personal,
right.
and that no stories are alike. But many veterans speak of same enduring memories: the cold, the hunger, the noise, the smells, uh, and the emotional weight that lingers more than 70 years later. That's so beautifully put. I don't know that
Thank
I could have done that any better, Chisu. I really love just the personal feeling that you put into this that I think any viewer will get when they see your exhibit and read what you've put here.
you.
Really
I must
beautiful.
admit, while working on this project, I sometimes didn't know how to go through the emotions I was feeling, talking with the veterans, how to say the right thing sometimes, when they're sharing
Mhm.
vulnerable moments with me.
Mhm.
So to put all that and make it to gather all those stories and put it in one exhibition, I struggled a lot in the sense that, what story do I choose? What do I want to share?
But you did it beautifully, because I struggle with the same thing. And I don't know that I'm as successful as you were here. And this gives the people an insight to what it was like for you
Mhm.
and what these veterans are like. I love that. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
should we go to the next one?
Sure. Right. So I wanted to incorporate some poems because there were a lot of poems written during or about the Korean War. And I think that many have never been shown to the public. So this was a poem that was written by an American who served in Korea during the Korean War. I don't know any details about this person because there weren't, I looked up online. I don't know what year he served, but I thought that his poem was a very accurate description of what the service members experienced during the Korean War. And this was used as one of the introductory panels and one side of the exhibit because it's a ship, so there's two open sides. So the previous slide was on one end of the exhibit space, and this particular panel would have been on the other to be used as kind of an introduction to the space.
Hmm. And I think this poem speaks so well to the experiences of most veterans I know. So I think we should take some time for you, Chisu, to read this poem. And I think
Oh, wow.
veterans will love that because even for me, it's hard to read it. It's small, and I think it will resonate with them.
Sure.
So, in honor of all of our veterans, Chisu, I'm going to ask you to read this poem that you've selected.
Okay, gladly. Korean War poem. We didn't do much talking. We didn't raise a fuss, but Korea really happened, so please remember us. We all just did our duty, but we didn't win or lose. A victory was denied us, but we didn't get to choose. We all roasted in the summer. In winter, we damn near froze, walking back from near the Yalu with our blackened, frozen toes. Like the surf, the Chinese kept coming, with their bugles in the night. We fired into their masses, praying for the morning light. All of us just had to be there. And so many of us died, but now we're all but half forgotten. No one remembers how we tried. We grow fewer with the years now, and we still don't raise a fuss. But Korea really happened, so please remember us.
And this is by Lieutenant Commander
Roberto J. Princelar,
Roberto J. Princelar, U.S. Coast Guard.
if I
Wow.
pronounce it
Well,
correctly.
the only I think that is so true that I think for many years our veterans thought that it wasn't won and it wasn't lost. And in recent years, as I've talked to more and more veterans, they realize actually this was a forgotten victory because South Korea was invaded. US and UN nations answered the call to defend a small country and its people's freedoms. And they succeeded. South Korea was saved. We are here. Jisoo, you and I are here. Your family's here. Millions of people live in freedom. So this is not a lost war by any means. And I think they were mislabeled as a lost war. And
Mhm.
so I think we have a duty as Koreans to help people understand that this was not a lost war, that they won. South Korea was saved. Certainly, North Korea was not saved. And one day, maybe the people of North Korea can be freed. But the objective of the UN in answering the invasion of North Koreans was to save South Korea. And in that, they succeeded.
Mhm.
Uh, and look at South Korea today. It is a testament to their sacrifice. So I really hope that this veteran, by the end of his life, understood that he didn't lose this war, that he helped save a people and a nation.
I
Uh,
hope so too. I
yeah.
tried to look him up for many hours actually, but I didn't. So if any viewers who sees this video has any information about Mr. Princelar, I'd be very happy to reach out to him and thank him.
Well, I think he'll be very happy to know that you featured his poem too. It's beautiful. I've never seen it. So thank you for bringing this beautiful poem to our attention. Okay, so this is the next panel.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna widen the screen too so I can take a look.
Yeah,
Uh,
so this is the headline of San Francisco Chronicle
mm,
uh, of the invasion of South Korea. This is dated June 28th, 3 days after the invasion of South Korea.
right, right. And throughout the exhibit, I did dabble on whether how much information I wanted to show because, anybody can easily look up information about the Korean War. And so I tried to really keep the focus on the troops' perspective and tried to insert as many quotes I could as possible from our interviews, quotes that were more related to each panel. Right. And so um, yeah, it's about the outbreak of the Korean War and uh,
Yeah, I love the two squares in kind of the beige color. And these are
mhm,
quotes of the veterans that you interviewed about their thoughts of being sent to Korea.
right.
So that really gives it a personal voice of how they felt as they were sent there.
Hmm.
Many were drafted, some enlisted. So it's really interesting. And I think, I don't know if it's true of the veterans you interviewed, but most veterans I've interviewed said they didn't even know where Korea was. I think most people knew where Japan was because World War II had happened.
Right.
But Korea, no, they didn't know where it was.
Right.
Okay, so
And
anything here
interesting.
you want to point out, Chisu?
Uh, well, not in particular. It's mainly about, how what happened in the first few days of the war and how quickly America came because I mean, within a week, the Americans who were already stationed in Japan, they came to Korea. But it was they struggled. I mean, as you know,
Yes.
they
So I
struggled.
think it on the diagram that you put here shows the small Pusan perimeter on the right corner of the Korean peninsula.
Right.
And that perimeter is what was left of South Korea
Yeah.
that North Koreans had not taken. And that would have been in August of 50. So in a month and a half time,
Mm.
all of South Korea was lost. And
Right.
so this really illustrates the absolute possibility that South Korea could have been lost to communists.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And a time of real dire need is when US and UN forces came. As you said, Chisu, I know a veteran who actually stepped foot in Korea. Guess on what date? 4th of July, 1950.
Really?
Yeah. And I always told Mr. Kilfoyle, wow, you brought freedom from America to Korea when you landed. And he
Where,
fought in Daegu and Daejeon, way up. And then they got pushed back to Busan. So he was there even before the Busan perimeter was
right,
established.
right.
So yeah, we absolutely know that South Korea's uh, had been saved by Americans who came
Right.
at
By the
such
way,
a
when we think of front line, we just usually talk about we think about just a small area, but when I talked to the South Korean veterans, they said there was no clear front line. Everywhere was a front line because the North Koreans were attacking from all parts of the border. I mean, not the borders, but the lines. So,
Mhm.
there would be scattered all across the border or the front lines, and there was no clear line of where they were fighting.
Right. I mean, I know that a lot of veterans have told me that there were communist guerrillas.
Hmm.
So these were just civilian fighters who were pro-communists that were
Yes,
firing at Americans, even in South Korea, well behind enemy lines. So there was always a danger of being targeted by these communist guerrilla snipers.
right.
And many of my veterans have told me about them. So yeah, as that veteran told you, you could be killed anywhere, regardless of where the line was.
Right.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I also had another American veteran who told me the same story, how they always had these guerrillas attacking them,
Yeah.
and he was in a machine gun unit, but before he could even, start shooting at these guerrillas, they would hide in villages, but they were forbidden to fire towards villages because, you don't want to hit civilians. So they always struggled. They'd always be hit, and they couldn't fight back.
Right, right. And so that was a real uh, kind of a underlying battle that was always there. And even veterans who told me who were well behind enemy lines in the rear doing support type stuff, they would
Right.
have snipers shoot at them. So yeah, that's absolutely how it was. Okay, so the next one shows the unforgiving conditions of Korea.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, this speaks to me most in many ways because I know how bitterly cold Korea is. You cannot stand outside, even if you're wearing, several layers. It's very difficult to stand outside for hours. But these troops were outside day in, day out, without any shelter. At most, maybe they had some shallow foxholes. And in the first few months of the war, even though the temperatures were increasingly dropping, they didn't have adequate winter gear because, it only came much later. So, um, the veterans all talk about how bitterly cold it was and how difficult it was to deal with the conditions.
Hmm. And so, whether it was on the Western Front or the Eastern Front, so the Western Front would have been beyond Pyongyang. On the Eastern Front would be Chosin Reservoir. And the winter of 1950 was horrible in so many ways because from what I hear and have read, it was one of the coldest winters in Korean history on top of everything, on
Mm.
top of the onslaught of the hundreds of thousands of Chinese, it was one of the coldest winters
Right.
of Korean history. And so I want to ask you about this veteran, Bill Covey.
Hmm.
Covey. Can you
Yes.
tell me about him? It looks like he was in Korea 52 to 54. So he wouldn't have been in North Korea, but what did he tell you about the cold and the hot
Well,
conditions?
well, so sometimes okay, to be fair, when I talked to him, he says he was in North Korea. So that's kind of a little part that I need to, maybe you can help me with
Hmm.
because even though it was in 1952 and 53, I have had veterans tell me that they were still kind of either fighting in the borders above South Korea or in North Korea. I don't know how accurate that is because it was a bit difficult for me to verify.
Yeah, let me give you some clarification on that. And
Yeah,
I
that
was
would
confused too when I first heard it. I'm like, oh, I thought we were only in North Korea in 1950 in the winter. And then after that, we were pushed to the South Korea, and that was that.
right.
I think what most veterans I've come to know are explaining is that they were on the front lines near the 38th parallel. And
Mhm.
depending on the battle movements, they could be in North Korea, what was considered North Korea, or South Korea. And depending on what hill or mountain they would take, they would end up in North Korean territory. So I think it is correct to say that even veterans who fought 51 through 53
Mhm.
could have found themselves technically in North Korea, just above the 38th parallel, or above where Korean the 38th parallel line was before the war.
Mhm.
So they may not have been far up into the mountains like Chosin Reservoir or Changjin-ho
Mhm.
uh, area, but certainly they were in technically North Korea because they were above the 38. So a lot of the Punch Bowl battles that happened in Punch Bowl and also on the western sector
Mhm.
were in North Korea. So that's, I think, what our veterans are referring to. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
Right. But yeah, when I was interviewing Mr. Bill Covey, he has a amazing southern drawl because he's originally from Texas,
Okay,
Olden,
I love that.
Texas. And he was saying that he saw, like some people without ears due to frostbite,
Oh,
start
wow.
parts of the ears missing or fingers missing. And how he often talked about how they would tuck socks in their inside their shirts at night. So I don't know if you've heard that to keep it dry, because if you left it outside to dry, it would freeze in an instant, and you can't have wet feet or frozen
That's
or
right.
wear frozen
Yeah,
socks.
most
So
veterans have talked to me about those
right,
Mickey Mouse boots were so bad too,
right,
because
right. Oh yeah,
they wouldn't dry, and
yeah,
so their
they would
feet
make
would
their
freeze.
feet sweat. But
Yeah,
it was better to have sweaty feet than frozen toes.
yeah. So they dealt with all kinds of difficulties in this weather.
Right.
Uh, okay, so should we go to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. All right.
Okay.
So this is kind of like walking through the experiences of soldiers. I mean, it's really not easy to summarize 3 years of 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 Korean War in one page, but it's pretty much a page explaining about the experiences of the soldiers in those 3 years.
I love this quote by Mr. Red, Gene Red. You
Mm,
didn't know from one day to the next if you were going to die or not. So you really appreciated what you got. And that is, I think, the sentiment of most combat veterans I've met. You didn't
mhm,
know from one second. I know one veteran told me that in a split second, the guy he was talking to was killed by a sniper,
mm,
a communist guerrilla sniper, and they had just come out of having breakfast in a tent mess hall that they had, but they
mm,
were near the front lines, and so you just never knew. So that is absolutely true.
right. One of the veterans I interviewed, he's actually quoted up there. His name was Ed Burke.
Hmm.
Really lovely man. I still communicate with him every 2 weeks, I would say. I love calling to him and talking with him. Um, but he said the saddest part was always on the graves registration, when they would come and count how many people died
Hmm.
the day before. And he said that was always a difficult part of the day.
Wow. Yes. A lot of people don't know what graves registration did, but that was a unit solely tasked with collecting the
Hmm.
dead
Hmm.
and tagging them if they knew the identity of those who were killed.
Right.
And if they didn't, they were tagged as unknowns.
Mm,
And so many of those that were killed in Korea at the end of the war, we had about 88,100 missing in action. Now, some are truly missing, but some were found, but without any identification.
mm.
And so that's a whole nother segment that I've spoken about greatly. But yeah, so I
Missing in action.
understand. Yeah, I understand that very well. That grave registration had a very gruesome and very heartbreaking duty.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, 36,000 killed in Korean War.
Yeah.
There's a picture here you have of a medical battalion.
Uh,
Is that Mr. Burke?
yes. And Mr.
Yeah. What did
Edwards,
he
he's the
do?
one on
Was
the
he just there getting treatment or did he do something medical in terms of his duties?
So he was actually in what's the word, dental, making uh, uh,
He was a
uh,
dentist technician.
technician, yes, pretty much.
Okay.
He was there, but they didn't need that during the war. So
Yeah.
he ended up being a medic, and he said he did a little bit of everything, whatever was needed to be the extra hand, right? So sometimes he drove trucks, sometimes he moved ammunition, sometimes he worked in temporary tents like that, like in the picture you see behind him,
Hmm.
work helping the doctors operate on the fallen soldiers. So yeah, he really and he got to all the way to the Yalu River, and he's the one who actually brought back the North Korean flag that you see next to me here.
Oh, wow. I was wondering how you got that.
Right. So he's the one who brought that flag
Wow.
back. And there's an
Wow.
interesting story about that because he saw it, it was stuck on top of some sort of vehicle.
Hmm.
And he collected that, and it was in his attic or basement, wherever it was in his house for 75 years. And he himself had forgotten about it. And only when I started, talking to him to interview him, he probably shared that with one of his children, his son. And he said, "Hey, Dad, I have this North Korean flag. What do you want me to do with it?" And so Mr. Burke said, "Well, give it to Jisoo." And so that's how I ended up having it. And it's currently on display at the exhibition.
Wow. And we have to think about kind of related to what he was doing, is taking care of the wounded, is how many Americans had to fight for every inch of what they fought for
Hmm.
and to even get to North Korea, and how many were lost there. So really, that's a really incredible story of Mr. Burke having been just thrown in there as a medical dental technician to do everything but that, and to help the guys while they pushed up into North Korea. That is really incredible.
Right.
Thank you for sharing his story and his incredible souvenir from North Korea.
Oh yeah. And that flag, when you read about the history of the North Korean flag, it was only pretty much designed in 1948. So, and he found it, what, in 1950, right? So it was
Hmm.
just 2 years after they had designed that flag, and it's
Yeah.
all pure silk.
Oh,
Um,
really?
it
Wow.
is when you look at the fabric, it's all pure silk, and it looks as if it was painted over a screen, like screen painted, or
Okay.
how they did. But you can still see the marks of somebody having traced around some pattern.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's interesting. I never would have known that. But because you study these kinds of artifacts, you can tell us that. That's awesome.
Right. Well, yeah, and also I asked a textile specialist at the Asian Art Museum, and she
Hmm.
said it was a silk. I mean, by looking at the pictures.
Oh, wow. The only other flag I've heard a veteran share with me, and it was Mr. Graham. He was with the 1st Marine Division. He had made the Incheon landing. He fought in Seoul, and then he went up to Chosun. I mean, he did everything.
Wow.
Well, when he was in Seoul, he went to a school yard. They were in a schoolyard. And this kid came around the corner and handed him a flag, and it was a South Korean flag. It was
Mm.
hand sewn, like embroidery. So it wasn't fancy silk. It was
Right.
just a cotton material, and it was hand sewn with a Korean teguki.
Right. And
And
does he still keep that flag?
he still had it. Now he's passed away, so I don't know what he has done with it. But I have a picture of him holding it like this. And I think when we went to Korea in 2013, I think he took it with him.
Wow.
I think he waved it when he got there.
Right, right.
It's pretty
Well,
amazing.
when I
Yeah. So,
first got that flag, I was a little unsure what to do with it because,
yeah,
as a South Korean, technically, we're still
at
at
war.
war with North
Yeah.
Korea, and I was trying to figure out if I can actually keep it or whatnot. I mean, even though I'm in America, I think it doesn't apply in my case. But if I say,
Mhm.
for example, wanted to bring it to Korea to share or
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing it as a historical artifact. I don't
right, so
think we
that's what
want
I
to. I don't think
find
we want to hang
about
it in front of our house, but and I don't think we would.
right.
But yeah, I
But,
think it's a very important part of history that
mhm,
our veterans picked up when they went to North Korea, and they couldn't have gotten it any other way. And so it is actually also a symbol of what they fought against that we need to remember.
mhm.
Yeah, so I think it's good. All right. This is this a tribute?
Yes. So it's another poem that was written by one of Korea's most prominent poet, actually, and he served in the Korean War, and he had written this poem during the war in 1950. And it's the story how I found this poem is interesting because I came across the English translated version first in one rare book, and I tried to locate the original Korean version, but I had a very difficult time because it was nowhere, not even online. And so the only way I would have been able to find the Korean text would have been by contacting the Korean main library, the archivist there. But luckily, I know a librarian at the East Asia Library at Stanford University, and she was able to find it for me. So yeah, it's side by side, and it speaks so much. It's a beautiful poem, a beautiful tribute to the fallen soldiers who
Hmm.
served in the Korean War.
Yeah, and this is so important. I think a lot of Korean War related exhibits talk about the veteran, the history, but not necessarily fallen, a
Mm,
tribute to the fallen. And so I so appreciate your well-roundedness of who you're honoring. I have the great honor of knowing many families who lost their loved ones. Many
mm,
of them never even knew their fathers. I know several sons of these fallen heroes who were
mm.
in their mother's womb, and they
Oh,
were born during the war after their father had gone missing in North Korea.
oh,
So there's um, a lot of American families who still live in that war,
mm,
who have lost so much because of the war that we need to recognize as Koreans, that we are here alive, and yet someone in an American family has lost their father. And so that has been always so hard for me to reconcile as a Korean. Like, wow, no one in my family died during the war. And
mm.
yet I'm meeting these American families whose loved ones were lost. And so it is absolutely important to honor them. So thank you, Chizu, for doing that. Is there any other last thoughts on this before we go to the next?
No, but I just wanted to, I mean, to refer kind of talk about what your experience of talking to veterans, sorry, ch the children of the veterans who never met their fathers. There's a
Hmm.
little section here
Hmm.
uh, said that God approved of your good resolution the day your family is notified of your death. Your wife and children who've been yearning for your return will sing into a bitter chaos of sorrow and despair. Your wife, whose heart is pierced with sorrow's eternal arrow, will tell your starry eyed children morning and night about your noble valor.
Yes, that's so beautifully put. So
Right.
beautiful put. So I always do my best to console them that we Koreans are so grateful for what they gave up for us, and that we won't forget who it is that sacrificed everything for us, for our freedoms. That's so beautiful. Thank you. This is now turning to the other side of the
Right.
war, which is the Korean people and what was happening
Right.
with them.
Right. So yeah, I did want to show that the, as you mentioned, the sufferings that the Korean population endured. I tried to keep it a bit brief, as you can see.
Hmm.
But it was just about showing through pictures of people carrying everything they owned in their backs, including children, and trying to, walk towards south for safety.
Hmm. I'll share one small memory that my mom has, if you don't mind,
Yeah, of
that's very
course.
similar to this picture you have of just people with cloth pojagi, right? Pojagi on their
Yes.
back and putting on the cart. So my mom was 10 years old girl. So like, these little kids here. She had her baby brother on top of a cart. They were pushing. They didn't even have anything to pull the cart. They were just pushing it. There was no animal pulling it.
Right.
And then her older sister and her parents were leaving Seoul right after they found out the Chinese were coming down to Seoul. So they never escaped Seoul when the war started because the Korean communists went through so fast. They didn't want
Mm,
to follow them down to Busan. So they
mm,
stayed in Seoul. And
wow.
then when the Americans got Seoul back, they were so excited that they were freed. And then After the winter of 1950, the Chinese were coming down after pushing the Americans out, and they were headed for Seoul again. And eventually, in January, the Chinese did get Seoul again. So Seoul actually exchanged hands 4 times during the war. Anyway, my mom and her family were like this. They went across the Han River. She said it was frozen solid, and there was some old guy with a like a wooden floaty thing that he was getting people on to cross the Han River. And she
Right.
heard artillery going over the Han River, and they were walking on foot. And all of a sudden, she heard a buzzing in the air. It's a plane,
Mm.
and it swooped down, and she looked, and it had an American star on the side of the plane. And she said, at seeing that American star, she thought, "Wow, the good guys are here to save us." It's just the excitement of seeing a good guy fighting the bad ones that are, just chasing you out of your own home.
Right.
And so that level of just simple gratitude and safety
Hmm.
never left her.
Wow.
And I tell that story to a lot of Air Force veterans and families that my the first sight of my mom feeling safe and saved was an American plane.
Mm.
So yeah, she was fleeing on foot like this, and they ended up at Pyeongtaek. They went to their uncle's farm, and they hid there for a couple of months in the war. But
Okay.
yeah, so that was um, the real suffering of the Korean people.
Did you ever hear stories of veterans talking about trying on the A-frames themselves
Yeah,
because they're commonly
yeah.
used
Actually, yeah.
by the
Do you
veterans
have a
too
story to tell
sometimes?
us about that? Then I'll
I,
tell you
I,
mine.
no, I think you have better stories than mine because the people I interviewed, they never really tried them on, but they saw the Korean
Actually,
civilians
I wish I had known
with
you
the
were wondering
A-frames.
about that. There was a veteran, and I'll look for it for you. There's a
Right.
veteran actually holding it, and he's got like his backpack, and I think he's like supplies, and he's carrying it on that. He said it was genius. He loved that thing because it could carry so much and
Right.
distribute the weight and easy to, carry.
Right.
And when we went, so that's the same veteran I told you that made the Incheon landing that has
Mm,
a Korean flag that was
right.
embroidered.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So anyway, so we were in Daegu,
Oh, so you
the
traveled with them to
Nakdongang
Korea.
Busan perimeter in
Mm.
2013, and we were there for the commemoration of the Busan perimeter breakout.
Mm.
And then we were passing by this little Korean festival, and they had the A-frame. And he goes, "Oh my gosh!" He grabbed and he put it on. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's just like old times." And he loved that thing. He said he used that everywhere he went because it was easier to carry more.
Mm.
And he thought it was kind of ingenious. And he used to tell me, Koreans would carry these sticks of wood,
Right.
piled high, and it'd be a
Right.
small Korean man carrying it,
Three times his height.
yeah, like 2 or 3 times his weight and height. And so, yeah, that A-frame of this guy carrying something here, it looks like sack of rice, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Was it a sack of
Blankets were
rice?
common, bowls of food, rice, grains.
Yeah. I mean, he was lucky if he had a sack of rice back then.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, anyway, sorry about going on and on about
No,
that
it's fine. No,
A-frame.
but yes, one last thing about the A-frame. So I mean, this is something I'm going to talk about later about the exhibit that I'm working on in December. But one of the things on display will be an A-frame. In Korea, we call it jjigae.
Chige.
And I was able to find one of the very last jjigae makers in Korea, and so we're going to ship that from Korea all the way to New York this in the next few weeks.
That's totally awesome. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
But that wooden frame isn't. Sorry.
I don't think any of our veterans brought that back
No,
from the
I
war.
think it's impossible because even we're still trying to wrap our head around how to bring that to, ship that because it's not, I mean, you can flatten it, but right now the way it's shipped is it's just like a chunk of wood. The frame itself is wood and it's not detachable by any way, so you can't flatten it. So you'll just have to send a big box
Big crate.
over in a
Yeah.
crate practically.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that in your future work to do exhibits for other artifacts, it'll be kind of similar to that, right? Like really big items. Yeah.
Right, you never know.
Wow.
But
Yeah, we
yeah,
take so much for granted, but yeah, I mean, to think of Korea then, this is how we were. We were not mechanized as a country. We had no technology, no industry. And to look at today, where we have cars, refrigerators,
mhm.
appliances, electronic phones, everything coming out of Korea is truly a miracle, isn't it, Chisu?
It is
And
truly a miracle,
so I think
especially
it's
when you
so. important that you show how little we had as a country and
Right.
how primitive things were. Because I think people today think, oh, South Korea, yeah, K-pop, K-drama,
Mm.
all this Korean music and all this stuff. They think Korea was always modern. It
Mm.
wasn't. We had nothing during the war.
Right.
We were
Well, that's
so
another
different.
thing that the veterans often mention. They said they were making money in Korea, but there was nothing to buy. There
Hmm.
was no industry, nothing. They never really bought anything in Korea. If anything, they spent their money in Japan on the way out,
Right.
back
Because
home.
Japan actually had cameras. And so a lot of veterans, I don't know if you heard this, Chisu, but they bought cameras from Japan
Mhm.
when they landed there, and then they went to Korea and they took pictures while they were
Pictures.
in Korea
Right.
of Korea scenery and Korean people. And so even Koreans don't have too many pictures of the Korean War, but
No.
Americans do.
Right.
So
And
I really felt like I was looking at treasure when they
mhm.
showed me their pictures. I'm sure
Oh
you
yeah, same
felt the
here.
same.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's thanks to the great Japanese cameras they bought in Japan on the way to Korea. Because
Right.
imagine if they didn't even take pictures, we would really have nothing.
Right.
And I know there
So
were also combat photographers the US military had, war correspondents, but really just your average veteran taking
mhm.
pictures. To me, that's so precious that
That's
we
so
have that.
valuable. And
Yeah.
it's those candid pictures of what they saw in everyday life. Of course, when they're in actual combat, those who are in the front lines, they said they couldn't really take pictures and they
Yeah, they don't have time for that. Yeah.
right. But
But
those in the
they took a
supporting
few.
roles, yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry to
I've
interrupt. Go ahead.
oh no, it's okay. Those for example, medics or those in the supporting roles, they took a lot of pictures, and especially those veterans who served in Korea right after the Korean War, right after the armistice happened, they were able to take a lot of pictures. And so, as a Korean, I'm very grateful that they took all these pictures because Korea was not in a position. Koreans were not in a position to capture their own lives when the Koreans were too impoverished to capture those moments, whereas the Americans did. And so what we see today of Korea at that time are mainly taken by foreigners who were stationed in Korea or worked in Korea.
Yes, and so that's another gift that they gave to us, is they have that documentation
Mm,
of what Korea was like then through
mm,
the pictures they took that we don't have. So
right.
yeah, I have a lot of pictures, Shisu, that veterans have given me also, and so I'm sure a lot of veterans themselves have it, and I even have like a little slide, those slide things. I
Yeah.
have a
Oh,
whole
yes.
case of them that a veteran
35
gave
millimeter.
me.
Oh, I'll happily scan them for you if you ship them to
Oh
me.
my gosh, Chizu, I would
I
so
will
love that
happily
because
do
I don't know what
that.
to do with it.
No,
So I
because
need, yeah,
I
so I
figured
need,
out how to do that. I Some of the veterans gave me in 35 millimeter slide forms, and
yeah,
so I was able to figure out how to scan them on a scanner.
okay,
And
great.
so you ship it to me, and I'll happily scan them and
Oh
digitize
my
them for
gosh,
you.
it's been sitting there. Mr. Ladd has passed away, but his wife, his widow, gave it to me. I said, one day I'll do something good with this. I don't know how, but Chisu, I would so appreciate your help. So I'll send you a couple of pictures of what I have to kind of give you a preview to see if it's
Okay.
worth the effort.
Well,
And
even if it's not, I'm happy to digitize those kind of
okay,
photographs. For me personally,
wow.
I find them historically very important.
Yeah. Wow. Chizu, I have a lot of hopes that you can help get these things to a format where we can share them.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. Great.
Right.
Okay, that's a great discussion. For those of you who are viewing this, I hope you don't find this too boring, but this is really exciting for both of us. So you don't have a choice. All right, so they go to the next one. Coming home. This is a really important memory for all of our veterans, isn't it? What would you like to share with us here?
Well, if only I could kind of find a way to share all the amazing stories of the veterans coming home and being welcomed in America, because still at the time, these soldiers were considered as heroes, so they were welcomed back. And I've had, for example, Mr. Ed Burke, who was the one who found that North Korean flag. He mentioned how he tried to do a road trip from San Francisco. He landed in San Francisco, which was the first. Um, Image of home, back home, right, for many of the veterans, especially those who were, I think another port was Seattle, but a lot of them came through San Francisco. And seeing the Golden Gate Bridge, they mentioned how, excited they were to be back home. But I mean, in his case, he landed in San Francisco and then he pooled money with three other soldiers,
Hmm.
and they bought a car in San Francisco and wanted to drive all the way to New York, where most of them were living.
Uh-huh.
But the car broke down somewhere in Nevada, and then he had to hitch a ride. And this was at a time when, when you were wearing a uniform, you can still have people take you in because, they wanted to help. And so he was able to get a free ride all the way to New York, with his outfit, hitchhiking from Nevada.
Wow, he's very resourceful. But having survived the war and being a medic, going all the way into North Korea and back, I'm sure this was a piece of cake for him.
Yeah, he said it was a very exciting experience for a 21-year-old.
Yeah, well, they were very resourceful, and people were more accommodating and trusting of each other.
That is true.
Now, what you said is very important. Experience that a lot of my veterans have also echoed. They said their first sight of coming home was the Golden Gate Bridge.
Mm,
So many of my veterans told me
mm,
that when they went under the bridge, they felt a feeling of home and
mm.
just the sheer joy of seeing that. Wow, we're home now, so far away from the horrors of war, to a very different world, part of the world.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think the Presidio, the whole San Francisco area holds a lot of fond memories for the veterans who came there,
Mhm.
regardless of where their hometown was. This is most where they came in. Now, I
Right.
saw one picture of a troop ship coming back from the Korean War,
Mhm.
and with the Statue of Liberty in the background. New
Oh,
York. Now, that
wow.
was very rare. Now, that was a very specific circumstances that led them to go to the East Coast. But
Hmm.
most I know, like you said, arrived in San Francisco or Seattle, and then they had to take a train or a car
Or
back to their
bus. Right.
hometowns.
That is true.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I know a lot of veterans say that nobody was there to welcome them home. Some families couldn't go all the way to the West Coast to welcome them home.
Right.
America, for the most part, didn't really recognize the Korean War was happening. And so a lot of veterans tell me that when they came home, their neighbors or friends would say, "Where have you been? Where? Korea? Where's that? What's happening over there?" So I hear very different kinds of accounts from veterans. Some, whole families went there, and of course that's their family. But it wasn't like World War II, where the whole country turned out
Mm.
for return of American troops from Europe or the Pacific.
Right.
So
Right.
it was a very different kind of atmosphere where America was tired of war, and only those who were associated with anyone serving abroad would know that Korean War was happening.
That is true.
So a lot of the
I
veterans, and I'm sure your veterans have told you that they felt forgotten because people just didn't seem to care. They didn't care. So they kind of clammed up, didn't say anything to anyone,
right. Right.
and they went on with their lives to build a family and to build their lives.
Right.
And only in recent years, in their 70s and 80s, did they join these Korean War veterans groups
Mm.
to find, some understanding of what the war they fought.
Right.
And it is only recently they come to really understand and be proud of what they did in Korea
Mm.
to save South Korea. So, yeah, so coming home is a very, I think, a very different accounts depending on the veteran.
I guess so. I mean, the veterans I interviewed, I think, it was more like an emotional experience for them,
Mhm.
especially, reuniting with their family members who they haven't seen for a few years, and the parents waiting not at maybe San Francisco, but at their local train stop or bus stop, and
Mhm.
just wringing their hands, making anxiously waiting for their son at 1, 2 a.m. in the morning,
Mhm.
waiting all day long just to make sure that their son arrives safely home. I mean, those kind of stories were so heartwarming to me.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me of Mr. Bainan in Minnesota, Minneapolis. He said his mom kept the Christmas tree up. He
Oh,
arrived back
oh,
after Christmas. I forget what year. But anyway, he came back like March. She still had the Christmas tree up for him with his gift, his presents
oh,
under the tree.
that's sweet.
Yeah. So yeah. And those personal stories stay with you. Like
They
I'll
do,
always remember those kind of stories, like the stories you were told by your veterans, right?
right?
That's the
But in
power.
all cases, when they talk about how when they reunited with their family members, they all started shedding a tear or two.
Yeah. Yeah, because they still remember just
The
that
emotion.
moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is snapshots of recovery of post-war Korea.
Right. So, yeah, I put a lot of colorful pictures there. You'll probably notice that prior to this panel, everything was kind of black and white. And
Hmm.
this was when, color photographs were introduced
Hmm.
and more commonly used. And the soldiers who were stationed in Korea, there weren't a lot of things for the soldiers to do, and they were pretty base bound, as you probably have encountered, right? They weren't really allowed to interact with the locals or wander out on their own in the first few years after the war ended, and so they did a lot of photography as a hobby, and so these are all photos that were taken shortly after the Korean War. And it really highlights how different Koreans look, from the haggard, suffering look that were shown in the previous photographs. People look a bit more, better fed and happier to have to have this peace.
Hmm. Now, can you tell me about this quote you have from David Gaffeler? How do you say that?
Gefeller, yes.
Yes.
So his family. So I was not able to interview Mr. Gefeller in person. It's his son who had uh, all his letters that he had sent to his parents from Korea in 1954 and all the photographs. I mean, he had a wonderful collection of colorful photographs of Korea in 1954. And so I just wanted to emphasize how I used this quote to show that the US service members were involved in the orphanages. And I heard this from other people who were stationed in Korea after the war, how they would collect money. Some of the lower ranked soldiers, were not making a lot, but they would always try to chip in to give, their food or money or clothing to the local orphanages, and making sure that the children got the money and the food, and not necessarily the people running the orphanages.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard from a lot of veterans. The majority of them came across kids somewhere during the war, battles, just seeing kids, hungry and handing out whatever they left of their sea rations or whatever they could collect from the guys and take it out to them. It's just the kids are always a lingering memory, I think, for the veterans who saw suffering of children as really one of the most tragic parts of the Korean War.
Mm,
And their compassion and love for them has just really been heartwarming for me because whatever they've done unto these orphans, I feel like they've done it for me. It's my people. And so just that kind of love and compassion is just it's immeasurable of our veterans and so many who served even after that continue to help support orphanages. I'm sure you heard from your veterans. A lot of them wrote home saying, uh, Mom, Dad, I need kids' clothes. Send them, and their churches would gather, so their church members would gather and send clothing for the kids. And so I've seen pictures of Korean kids wearing American clothes, Jisoo. I don't
yes.
know if you've seen that. It's kind of cool, like cowboy vest,
I've
like
seen
Korean
I've
kid
seen
wearing a
them too.
cowboy vest and like American dresses.
Right.
And
I
I'm
think
like,
interacting with these children gave the soldiers a sense of normalcy based on what I heard. And they really love taking pictures with the kids or of the kids. I mean, I've come across so many pictures of veterans taking, I mean, of children during this
mhm,
period, and really, trying to interact with them, help these children, even though they themselves were very young men, right? I mean, what 21 to 19-year-old looks after other children this day and age, right?
right.
But
That's
that sense
so
of compassion.
that's so accurate what you said that they sometimes sought out children to gain a sense of normalcy,
Mm,
and innocence.
mm,
Because children symbolize purity and innocence and what's good about the world. And so
mm,
it kind of gave them something good to be focused on, and not all the killing and the fighting. Now,
right.
I want to share a quick story if I can.
Sure.
And I don't know what happened to that. I think this veteran has passed away. When I interviewed him, he took out something black. He said, Susan, I got something to show you from Korea. And it's another artifact. And if I can get a hold of that veteran's family, I will. She said, he took out a black thing. And I said, oh my gosh, that's komushin. It was a child's komushin, just black. It's not
Oh.
the decorated, colorful one. It's
Mm.
just black, simple one. And he
Black
said,
rubber shoes.
yeah, so he was battling. He was a Navy corpsman. He was not a Navy corps, Anglico. He was Air Naval Gun Liaison Company. So he was calling in fire from battleships, from the air, from the Navy ships. He was actually calling in coordinates. So he had a
Mm.
very specific job as a Navy Anglico. Anyway, while he was walking down this dirt road, he saw something black and he picked it up and he didn't know what it was. He just put it in his shirt pocket.
Mm.
And later on, he took it out and he realized it was a child's shoe. It was a
Mm.
small. And he
Oh.
thought, wow, where is this child? What happened to him? And then he said at that moment, he realized what he was fighting for.
Mm.
And he
Oh.
shows me this commission
Right. And he's
in
kept it
20,
all those years.
yeah, in 2013 or 2014. And I have tears streaming down my face because I think, wow, wow, that, he knew that these children would be worth dying for and fighting for.
Mm.
And that this was a remembrance and a kind of a wake-up call for him, this
Right.
small commission. And he
Um,
kept it all these years. And
I,
I think Mr.
it's
Myers has
incredible.
passed away, but the fact that he kept it all these years and kind of as a reminder of why he was there
Hmm.
was so beautiful to me. And
Beautiful.
yeah, so I want to share that. Gee, I wish I had known you, Chisu, longer earlier, so that way I
I
can pass on some of these artifacts to you. So
would
I
have
don't
loved to show.
know. Yeah, but that would have
Well,
been something. It's an
yeah.
old Kumushin, like really
I
small.
think all those matter. I mean, it's not the value of an object.
Right.
It's the story behind it that for me
Amen. That's
personally
so,
matters.
so true.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, I've heard so many nice stories of children encountering soldiers. I mean, for example, I talked to a South Korean civilian who was 11 years old at the time during the start of the Korean War,
Hmm.
and his school had been transformed into the barracks. Like one of the schools had become a hospital, and one other school had become the barrack for the soldiers. And he would always go, and he was a twin, so he would sing for the soldiers, and they would be so happy to hear children singing for them that they would just give everything they own, cigarettes or C rations, whatever, and they would bring a huge pile back home, and
Uh-huh.
then they would have other people come to buy it off of them, and then selling those items that they acquired through the American service members
Uh-huh.
was another way of,
Yeah.
for them to survive the
Survive. Yeah,
war.
that was their survival. Yeah. Well, that's very sweet that he remembers that.
Oh
Wow.
yeah, he had fond memories of in his interactions with the soldiers, and he would sell peanuts, roasted peanuts, and after they sang, he would sell more peanuts because the soldiers would clap and cheer them on.
Yeah.
And so he has very fond memories of his memories of the soldiers at that time.
Oh my goodness. That's precious. That's totally precious. Thank you for sharing that, Chisu. I love these stories. You and I could probably talk for hours.
Probably.
All right. All right. So Korea today.
Right. So for me, it was very important for the exhibition to showcase that the the effort was worth it. I mean, just based on how Korea has transformed since the Korean War. I didn't want to use modern photographs. I wanted to showcase, for example, this is Toksu Palace,
Uh-huh.
and the black and white photo shows the palace in ruins during the Korean War. And just a few years after, this is probably 1956, you can see that the palace has already been restored and people are enjoying a picnic outside, so how quickly Korea was able to become more stable and safe, right?
Hmm.
So I just wanted to show the positive result of what happened,
Right.
and just kind of it was my way of showing that the efforts and the sacrifices made were not, you know, for naught. It was really it meant something. It was very important for the people of Korea.
Right. And this is a national treasure.
Mm,
This is a part of a palace, isn't it?
it is. It
Toksugo.
is. Yes.
Now, I want to share something with you
Mm,
about a national treasure that American soldiers actively protected.
Hmm.
And this is a good time to share it. And this is, in a
Definitely.
way, a tribute to those veterans. So this is Mr. Rogers, Sherwood Rogers. He was battling in Suwon. You know the Suwon Fortress that's there?
Yes.
It's beautiful, right? Huge
Yes.
stone wall. I only recently saw it for myself. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
So he knew something I didn't even know when I interviewed him. He said, Susan, we were battling the North Koreans and they were shooting from the fortress down to us. And my company commander told me I can't shoot back or throw grenades. And I asked him why. Well, that's a national treasure. You can't destroy it.
Wow.
So they weren't allowed to throw any grenades
Mm.
into the Suwon fortress.
Wow.
Now, I think later on something's happened where there were some damages, but at least when Mr. Rogers was there fighting, his company commander was very mindful of these historic places. And no
Mm.
matter what the North Koreans did, the Americans weren't going to destroy it. And
Mm.
so I just really appreciated him telling me that. And so only in 2023 did I have a chance to go to Suwon because I'm a Seoul girl. I was born in Seoul and I only lived in Korea for 9 years and then we came to America. So I don't know anything outside of Seoul. So we went to Suwon and I couldn't believe how beautiful that fortress and the grounds were. And I thought about Mr. Rogers
Wow.
and the company commander who had helped preserve that. And so
Right.
that's such a love and respect for another culture
That is
that
so
I so
true.
appreciate. Yeah.
Right, right. But I hear stories of the Americans being very mindful, for example, not shooting towards villages,
Yep.
not another pilot, he was a pilot during the Korean War, and he mentioned that they didn't carpet bomb during the war. It was very targeted.
Yep.
They were instructed to be mindful of not just, bombing everywhere. It was very targeted, but mainly for supply, places where they knew that the enemies had supplies
Hmm.
or ammunition. So for when I hear those kind of stories, you can see that they were very mindful
Hmm.
of what they were doing.
Yes.
Right.
Wow. So this is a beautiful couple of panels, and I'm sure it was very hard for you to decide what to put in. And as you said, you've learned so much. I mean, just by talking with you, I can see the depth and the wealth of knowledge you've gained from the veterans that may not be, all reflected here, but I think you got the essence of
Right.
their experience. So thank you for this beautiful exhibit. Now let's go to a couple of the pictures
Okay.
of your creating the exhibit and your
Yes.
exhibit opening.
Yeah. Susan, just 1 second. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna get something really quickly. I had to open the door. I'll be right back.
Okay,
Okay.
sure. So for those of you who are looking at this, I think this is part of the graphics that Chisu had to create for her exhibit. The stories they keep, and then it's written in Korean underneath here. So I just explained what this was. You're probably just doing the graphics
Yeah,
for
so this
the,
is vinyl.
yeah.
I use a lot of vinyl throughout the exhibit, and mainly to use as the title and also to put the quotes. You'll see
Hmm.
throughout the exhibit, I use a lot of the quotes and put on vinyls. And so this is me trying to measure everything because we're trained to make everything leveled and um, and position it so that it doesn't look wonky to the eye.
Yeah, people like average people like me go to a museum. We don't have an appreciation for all the thinking that went behind just the size of things, the location, and the placement of things in exhibits. So this will kind of give me a newer appreciation, Jisoo,
Yeah.
of all the thinking and work that goes into it.
Right.
So
Well,
it looks
I
like
should
you're editing a video here of a
yes,
veteran.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I I interviewed 15 American veterans and
Hmm.
7 South Korean veterans. So the American veterans I interviewed in the States, mainly in the Bay Area, and then in the Korean veterans I interviewed in Seoul when I was visiting last winter. I also interviewed a few American and Korean civilians, and so that amounted to about 30 hours plus of videos that I had to go through and edit. And coming from a museum background, you know that the attention span of the average visitor is not very long, so you can't show 30 hours of video. So
Right.
I had to make sure that I really edit it down, and it was not easy, but I managed to edit it down to 13 minutes. But along the way, I must say I struggled because I wanted to keep every story
Hmm.
intact, but you can't showcase every single.
Well, I hope you would upload the full videos.
Right. So
For those of
I
us who
did just
have the time, we would love to. I would love to watch that. So
right. Well,
please
so
let me
the
know if you
30
do
hours.
decide to put the full videos out there
Yeah,
on
I mean,
YouTube.
I hope I can do a longer version and a shorter version. So currently at the museum, it shows the video itself is 13-minute long.
Okay.
But before that, it was 35 minutes. And so I can try to show two versions depending on
Uh-huh.
who has
That's
the patience to
great.
go through it.
Wonderful. I am sure this is only the beginning of so many places that will want to see your video and your exhibit. I am sure of that.
Thank you.
So this is your opening. I guess you're kind of
Yes, I was
introducing the
giving a little
exhibit.
speech at the opening reception, and yeah, I was very honored to have several people come at kind of last minute because I had my professors and also other museum professionals and who work in the Bay Area visit, family friends, obviously. But for me personally, I was so honored to have several veterans come,
Hmm.
either veterans who served during the Korean War or shortly after, or even Vietnam War. There were a few family friends who were veterans, so they came and or their family members came. And some of my 9-year-old daughter's classmates came. And for me, it was really I was excited to show them the exhibit for them to kind of be the next generation of children to continue the memories of the sacrifices. And they continue the stories and the memories.
You know, Chizu, and that's why I'm just so grateful for the timing of this. You know, this is the 75th anniversary of the Korean War on Wednesday, isn't it?
Yes, 2 days
And
later.
yeah, and how great to be able to share this anniversary with our veterans, showing you and a little bit of the work I've done to preserve their legacy. I think this is the greatest thanks and expression of gratitude we can give them is to show them that we will not forget them
Mm,
and their stories will not be forgotten. So thank you for uh, your gift to our veterans in this way.
right.
And so
Oh, I
this is
should
the,
add that. Oh,
oh,
yeah, I'm
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but I should add that at the opening reception there were two consuls who came from the South Korean embassy.
Oh, San Francisco Consul.
Yes, at San Francisco consulate
Yeah.
to show their support. So I was very grateful for them to come because they also understand the importance of of the Korean War.
You know what? I want to take a moment to thank them because in the years that I've done work with the veterans, I've worked with the LA
Mm,
Consul General's office, but I know that San Francisco, more than any others I know on the West Coast, have been very active about
mm,
honoring Korean War veterans. I've seen them in different articles, different honor ceremonies,
mm,
giving the Ambassador Peace Medals. Uh, they are very active, San
mm,
Francisco Korean Consulate. So I am so grateful that they even helped show their support for you with this exhibit,
mm,
and that love and care continues at that consul general's office. I've always
right.
been so impressed with that particular location. San Francisco
Right.
is a good one.
Yes, it's
Okay,
beautiful.
so this is your exhibit with some of the quotes from the veterans on the right, and then coming home. Okay, so I guess this is the last part. Okay, I'm going
Yes.
backwards on this one.
No, that's totally
Yeah.
fine.
Okay, so this is Korea
Very
today, and
today.
then
Yeah,
okay,
this
this
is
is the
kind of the
beginning
entrance.
entrance, right? This is
Yes.
what you were doing with the tape and everything
Yes, for
on
sure.
the wall
Yeah,
there.
the vitals.
Yeah. Okay, so these are the beautiful Korean dresses. Wow, I
Right.
can't believe they're
Yeah,
made
these
out of
are the
silk.
dolls. Yeah, uh, I was so excited to come across these, and I
Mhm.
actually went. These are from my personal collection.
Mhm.
I find the stories behind them interesting, and that photo that you see on the label,
Uh-huh.
it's a photo that I found in one of a person who had uploaded online, and well, here you can't see it, but it shows the exact same doll of the mother with the baby
Uh-huh.
showcased behind a show window
Oh, wow.
in a display case. And so you can, and the date show stamps 1953. So it was a photo taken in 1953 by a veteran. And that same doll is what you see in the display case at the museum today.
I wonder if that's the same literal doll, or do you think it's a
I
copy?
don't think so, very
You don't think
unlikely,
so?
but
Oh, okay.
you never know.
Wow, that'd be amazing if it was, huh? And what coincidence you would find that picture too.
Right.
How cute that little kid is in the back,
Yeah.
of the
Because
mom.
the potegi that
Yeah,
we call it the baby carrier potegi. It was a long strip that you wrapped around your
yeah,
waist as a mother, and so it was a very common sight to
yeah. And
see.
to show you how old I am, I was like that when I was little.
Really,
My mom carried me like that when I was little, so I'm old. I know they don't do that in Korea anymore.
right? Yeah, they have these Western carriers, but
Yeah,
there are still people who still prefer the old-fashioned way because it's
yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Right?
So
So
this
this
is
is the
kind of
end.
the hallway.
Right.
I love
Yeah.
that you put some of the quotes of the veterans on the floor. You can kind of look
Yes.
down there as well.
Right. It's right underneath the TV screen.
Oh, okay, okay. So that makes sense to put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't get that
No,
part.
no, no, no worries. And then
And
it
there's
was,
the Mickey Mouse boots, right?
oh yes, yes. The
Our
Mickey
veterans
Mouse.
all wore those hats. It's a love and
Oh,
hate relationship with those
oh
boots.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So
I
there's
had
the screen you were talking about, and then the
yes,
North Korean flag
right.
that was
And
captured.
I would have loved to put more objects, but it's a ship. It's very narrow and there's not a lot of space, so I had
Hmm.
to kind of narrow it down to three objects. But I
Yeah.
had a few. I had intended to also show photographs and albums that the veterans had shared with me
Hmm. I think
and
the
put it on
boots are,
display.
I think the boots are also a very important artifact you chose because they came to a foreign land and every inch of Korean soil they walked and fought, they fought to save. And so there, to me, when I look at that, I think about that is just every inch they had to fight for to keep free. Um, and so there's a lot of, I think, beautiful meaning in looking at soldiers' boots.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Right.
beautiful. And that's one of your veterans. When people
Right.
talk about the Korean War, I can't speak through my tears. That's how much pain I went through.
This is a South Korean veteran who I interviewed.
Mm, I see.
So yeah, he was just he would every time I asked him a question, he would start talking and he would start trembling and
Mm,
crying because he went through the Korean War, the entirety of the Korean War, and this was the case for most South Korean veterans. They had to serve 3 years and plus, and in their case, a lot of them were in direct combats. Sometimes they didn't have even have guns, so they used bayonets or knives
hmm.
and fought all throughout the night. That's what they commonly told me. So, I think they still have a lot of post what's that
Traumatic,
word?
yeah,
Yeah, post-traumatic
trauma. Yeah,
trauma,
trauma. Yeah,
so
and
to
stress
say.
from the war.
Sure. Yeah.
My dad fought in the war, and so yeah, that's something that I think it's very important that you point out. Americans rotated. If you were in the front lines, you served 8 months and you rotated home, or if you were in the rear, it was 12 months. So at
Right.
most, somebody was there was 12 months.
Mm.
But I know one veteran, he said, I'm going to continue on. I'm going to see this war through. And he stayed another year. So he's an exception. But
Right.
most returned on the average in
Hmm.
8 months to 12 months time.
Right.
Whereas, as you said, South Koreans were in there until the war was over.
Right. They
We
didn't
were
have a
already,
choice.
yeah, we were already short of men, and a lot of young boys were pulled off of farms and
Definitely. Yes.
conscripted into the army to fight. Now, in my dad's case, he enlisted. He was, I think it was 18 at the time,
Mm.
and he enlisted, and he was lucky enough to be attached to an American unit as a Katusa, Korean
Mm.
augmentation to the U.S.
Wow.
Army.
Okay.
And because he had the amazing luck of having learned English a little bit,
Mm.
he became an interpreter during the war.
That's incredible.
So, but yeah, but he was attached to the 7th Infantry Division. I'm sorry, 3rd Infantry Division of the US Army. So, anyways, yeah, it's a very different experience for Korean veterans, as you said, because they fought the entirety of the war
Yes.
and they didn't get a break and they didn't come home. That was their home, very broken and devastated. So it's a very different experience for a Korean
Very different
War,
experience.
Korean
And
veteran.
they weren't really paid. I mean, one of the veterans I talked to, he said the pay was enough to only buy a pack of cigarettes. So it was pretty much close to nothing. And food was
Mhm,
also inadequate
mhm,
because, there was a lot of issues in the military.
mhm.
So they only remember hard
Are you there,
South Korean
Jisoo?
veterans.
Okay, there was a little bit of a kind of a freeze there on your screen.
Yeah.
So how great that you have um, both the ability to speak English and Korean, that you could interview both Korean veterans and American veterans and kind of marry their experience together. That is really wonderful that you can do that. I forgot most of my Korean, so I'm kind of useless when it comes to Korean veterans. I usually when I
Well,
meet Korean veterans, I just say hello and that's enough.
okay. Well, I
Like,
must say, interviewing the South Korean veterans was a struggle because these people are in their 90s, right?
yeah.
So they all have very strong dialects, like either from the southern west, I
Uh-huh.
mean, like Gyeongsangdo dialect or
Uh-huh.
Jeolla dialect. Some come from North Korea. Even one of the veterans I interviewed actually was on the SS Meredith Victory.
Uh-huh.
He escaped from Hamhung. So they all have very strong regional dialects, and then you use military jargons and also um, words that were used like 70 years ago, and so I had a hard time trying to transcribe all
Yeah.
their
Well, my
text.
grandmother always used to say 빨갱이. You know what that means, right? Red
Yes, of
commie,
course, of course,
빨갱이.
yeah.
Like they don't say that anymore now, but yeah,
No,
things
no,
like
they
that.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that generation does, and I understand it. But there were other vocabulary that I really struggled to understand. So I had to
Yeah.
sometimes ask my dad or some elderly person to help me
Uh-huh.
interpret.
Right. Now, you mentioned that your father also served in the Korean military for
Mhm.
many decades.
He was in the South Korean military for 35 years,
Wow.
right, in the army. And actually, he worked very closely with the U.S. military. And I grew up in downtown Seoul.
Uh-huh.
And because of my father's job, I was able to come across and interact with a lot of American, service members and sometimes their families.
Hmm.
But at the time when I was a child, I never really deeply thought about why the Americans were stationed there. And in my childhood, like during my childhood, I just felt that their presence was just a given.
Hmm.
But after working on this project for a year, I do now have a deeper understanding and appreciation of the historical ties of the two countries.
And that's why it's so important for people like you and I to share what we're learning,
Mhm.
because we can open the eyes of a lot of Koreans who kind of take things for granted, right? That don't think about Korean War and its connection to us and our livelihood and our prosperity today. I
Right.
certainly didn't make that connection. I mean, we arrived in America in 75. This is the country that sent these veterans. I never thought about them until 2013.
Mm,
And they could have been my coworker's parents,
right.
father. They could have been my neighbor growing up. I'm like, oh my gosh, how many Korean War veterans did I miss while I was growing up?
Yes.
So self-focused. And
Well,
so,
that's how I feel. I mean, I wish I had been interested in this project even 10 years earlier, then I could have
right,
interviewed more people. But
right.
this time around, it was not easy to find and locate the veterans.
Yes, but I'm so grateful you did. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with not only this audience, but many others that will come to your exhibit and many other exhibits you'll be doing. So I know, what has been the feedback so far? Have you heard from the visitors to your exhibit?
Right. So I can only speak of the feedback that I received from visitors who attended the opening reception. So one American friend told me that looking at the images of children reminded her of her Korean in-laws.
Hmm.
And then as a mother, when she saw photos of the children, she started, having tears in her eyes. And then I had a veteran who served in Korea after the Korean War, and he said it brought back a flood of memories.
Mm.
Looking at the pictures and me using some of the pictures that he himself had taken in the exhibition space. Also, I had some South Korean friends who currently reside in San Francisco, and they were saying how the exhibition made the story more relatable to them than what we as children learned through textbooks in Korea. So those were the feedbacks. But I was very happy. Yeah, so those feedbacks were very important and meaningful for me.
Hmm. Well, I tell you, I shared some of your pictures and I posted your thoughts on my Facebook page recently. And people are
Thank you.
so excited that a Korean lady has created this exhibit to give voice to our veterans because that's something a little bit more tangible than, Facebook posts that I write, That's just in the cyberspace or whatever, but this is something physically they can go see and that someone has done a lot of research and put a lot of love and care into to educate our public. So I so appreciate you, Chisu.
Right.
This is such
Well,
a necessary thing, not only for America, but for Koreans to preserve Korean War history.
right.
The next thing I wanted to ask you was, oh, actually, before I go to the next question about your future exhibit, what's been the most rewarding thing about doing this exhibit for you?
Well, it was really to hear the firsthand experience of people who experienced the war or shortly after the war, because, as I said, it was never really relatable to me growing up in Korea, where, we only saw uh, developments and progress happening. And so for me, it was important to hear their stories and having these people who really, only met me a few times open their mind, open up and share very vulnerable moments with me. So I
Hmm.
felt very humbled and honored.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really precious, isn't it, Chisu? I feel like we are caretakers of history and someone's personal experiences. And that's a very important responsibility we have.
Mhm.
And to inspire other people with it and to share it like this publicly is so beautiful. So, what do you have in terms of future planned exhibits, Chisu? I'm so excited for more work you're going to be doing.
Thank you. Well, so right now I'm working as a co-curator with the director of the American Merchant Marine Museum.
Hmm.
They're also working on a exhibit on the Korean War, but it's with the focus on the famous Hungnam rescue or Hungnam evacuation that took place in 1950,
Hmm.
where the many naval ships, including the SS Meredith Victory, evacuated over 100,000 North Korean refugees from North Korea from Hungnam to South Korea. So that exhibit will highlight the Hungnam rescue.
Hmm.
And just to give you a little bit of historical background, it was the largest humanitarian evacuation by sea in wartime history. And the SS Meredith Victory, they took more than 14,000 refugees. Now, this was a cargo freighter that was just intended to move of cargo back and forth, but it filled 14,000 refugees safely from North Korea to South Korea. And along the way, 5 babies were born. No one was, everyone landed safely on South Korean soil, and many of the descendants today are thriving in South Korea. And so, one of the last surviving crew members from that rescue mission, Mr. Burley Smith, will be sharing his story in the exhibition. And one of the people, that South Korean veterans who I interviewed in South Korea, he happened to be one of the teenagers who was on board that ship on the SS Meredith Victory. His story will also be shared on this exhibit. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this upcoming exhibition that will take place in December this year at the museum in New York.
Well, December is the perfect timing because that's when it happened.
Yes, indeed. The Christmas miracle, as they call it.
On
Yeah.
Christmas Day, they arrived in South Korea.
Yes,
Talk about a miracle. And
truly.
that's a beautiful story. And thanks to a movie, I think that was done in Korea, and a lot of attention on the Hungnam evacuation. I know there's also a memorial in Kojido,
Yes,
uh, that they created. So there's a
yes.
lot about Hungnam, and I'm so glad for the attention on it because it is one of the greatest, as you said, humanitarian actions
Mm,
of any war. And
yes,
it is really amazing. From what I've read, the 190,000 North Korean refugees now number, with their descendants, 1 million people who are alive and free
incredible.
today. 1 million people. So, what the U.S. military did, and the U.S. Navy in particular, in evacuating with so many vessels, not only their own military personnel, but North Koreans who wanted to seek freedom is really a powerful and beautiful story.
It is indeed.
So I'm so glad that you're going to be doing that, and I'm looking forward to your sharing that with us. Uh, Chizu, I have a feeling you and I are going to be talking a lot, and I so
I look forward to
appreciate
that.
your time with us today. And I think to close, I think it makes sense for us to share a message of gratitude to our Korean War veterans.
Hmm.
What do you think,
Okay.
Chizu? I thought about creating a separate message on the anniversary of the 75th, thanking veterans, but I think this is better with you to thank them. So if you'd
All
like to
right.
say a few words to our Korean War veterans
Yeah,
for the
definitely.
75th anniversary.
Right. So, even though the Korean War is a fading memory of today's generations, the Korean War still quietly shapes South Korean society and identity. And the start of the war, June 25th, which is 2 days from now, is a national holiday in South Korea. And the South Korean War has influenced Korean culture, from music to film, education, and more in our society today. And so along the way, I was able to come across a lot of interesting poems and music that I tried to incorporate in the exhibit. And I just want to say that the profound historical connection between our two countries is a consequence of the sacrifices of the men and women of this period. And as a South Korean, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all these people who sacrificed their youth, their innocence, and in many cases, their lives for the freedoms we enjoy today. So I just wanted to share this message with the veterans who may be looking at this video.
She said that was beautiful. And I want to second everything you've said and to, again, express my sincere and never ending gratitude to our Korean War heroes and families of fallen heroes who gave us, as you said, their youth and sacrificed so much to give us our future. And Chisu and I and millions of Koreans live in freedom today. And I'm so grateful that as part of our message of gratitude to you, that we as two Korean women are examples of two Koreans who will preserve your legacy and remember your stories and always honor them. So we just want to ask God to bless this great country, the United States of America, for having gone to save South Korea and all of its veterans who wore that uniform to save the freedoms of the Korean people. So I always feel, can never thank our veterans enough. So we thank you forever. We thank you forever
Thank
because
you.
we can
Yes.
never thank you enough. And so, Chisu, I so look forward to all the great work that you will do
Thank you
with
very
what
much.
you have learned from the veterans and will continue to share with us. Thank you so much. This has been such a gift to me, and I certainly hope that watching this video, will make our veterans so proud.
I hope
The
so too.
fact that what they have done matters so much to the Korean people.
Yes, indeed. And I wanted to add that I will continue interviewing veterans as long as I can. So even though I've graduated from this program and my exhibition is up, I will continue to collect stories from both Americans and Koreans. In fact, this September, I'll be going to Korea to continue interviewing South Korean veterans because I wanted to collect more of their stories. And hopefully, this will be an exhibit that will, continue and progress over time.
All right. Well, I look forward to many great things, Chizu,
Thank you
that you
very
will
much.
do to help preserve our Korean War veteran stories. Thank you so much, Chizu. I can't thank you
Thank
enough.
you very much. And I wish you a wonderful week.
Thank you so much, Chizu. Take care.
All right. Take care, Susan. Bye bye.